Alright guys, so I'm making this video to go over our study guide for our test tomorrow. In number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we don't know the angles except for one of them. So we have to use Pythagorean theorem. So these are not special right triangles. These are just right triangles. So you have to use Pythagorean theorem. As you can see, I didn't even use the denominator in number 1. I saw that they all had 5 in common, so I just did 1 squared and 3 squared, which gave me 10, and I took the square root of 10, and then I just put it back over 5. If you did the same thing, but you had 5, you would do 1 squared, which is 1, 5 squared, which is 25, 3 squared, which is 9, 5 squared, which is 25. And then you add those together, you get 10 divided by 25, and you take the square root, you get the same thing. The square root of 10 is just the square root of 10, and the square root of 25 is 5. So if you see that they have common denominators, you can just take the numerator and do the same thing. Okay, number 2, 15 was our hypotenuse, and 13 was one of the other sides, and x was another side. So I take it straight into my calculator, and I just plug in 15 squared minus 13 squared, like this. 15 squared minus 13 squared. And that's how I got 56. So that's how I kind of skipped that step right there. So you have the square root of 56, and then I broke it down. You have 8 and 7. 8 breaks down to 4 and 2. 4 can break down even further to 2 and 2. So you can circle your 2's. However, 2 and 7 are left at home, so 2 times 7 is 14, and your 2 comes outside. So this x has to be 2 squared root of 14. Number 3 was a Pythagorean triple. You could have solved it using Pythagorean theorem, but I knew that if one side was 12 and one was 13, then the other one had to be 5. But if you wanted to use Pythagorean theorem, you would set it up the exact same way, 12 squared plus x squared equals 13 squared, and you would have gotten 5. Just one of those things you can memorize, like 3, 4, 5. Number 4, your hypotenuse was 34, so you leave it by itself, x squared plus 21 squared. When you plug 34 squared minus 21 squared in your calculator, you get the square root of 715, which does not reduce. So x is equal to 700 and the square root of 715. Yes. 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 Okay, number 5. 66 is your hypotenuse. Same thing. 66 squared is by itself. The other two are on the other side. You have the square root of 3,267. I broke it down using 121 and 27. 121 is a perfect square. It breaks down to 11 and 11. 27 breaks down to 9 and 3. 9 breaks down to 3 and 3. So I circled 11 and 11 and 3 and 3. So to 11 and 3 make 33, and then 3 is left at home. This was on your quiz, wasn't it? This was one of your quiz questions from last week. 6. This time you're finding your hypotenuse. So 48 squared plus 14 squared equals x squared. X was equal to 50. Alright, on number 7, John leaves school to go home. So if he walks 6 blocks north, so just go straight up 6, and then 8 blocks west. So assuming he goes straight up 6, straight sideways 8, how far would it be if he walked straight from school to home? If you use Pythagorean theorem to find your hypotenuse, John would be 10 blocks away from school. 10 blocks. Alright, this bottom piece, guys, is where we get into our special right triangles. How do we know they're special right triangles? Because we see 30, 60, 45, 45. Okay? So, remember to go over your special right triangle. So here's our 45, 45, 90. If this is x and this is x, then this is x square root of 2. So it's very simple if you have case 1. If this is 4 and this is 4, then this is 4 square root of 2. Case 2 is also very simple. Let's say this is 3 square root of 2. So if this is 3 square root of 2, then your legs are just 3. However, case number 3 is a little bit more difficult. Let's say your hypotenuse is, in this case, I think, yep. Okay, so in this case, you're given your leg. Your leg is 12. So you're giving your leg, oh, that's a 30, 60, 90. Okay, I don't want to confuse you. Let me go over 30, 60, 90 real quick. Remember, you have your short. Short's always the easiest to find because, or easiest to work with, because once you have short, you can find everything else. Once you have short, to find hypotenuse, you just multiply it by 2. And then to find leg, you multiply it by the square root of 3. Okay, the only bad part about 30, 60, 90 is when you're given leg and there's no square root of 3. That's what happens right here. We're given leg is across from 60, and it's 12. And we need to find short. Well, which one's short? Short's across from 30, so it's y. How do we find short when we're given leg? This is leg. This is the case in which we have to plug it in here. When we're given leg and we want to find short and there's no square root of 3. So if this is leg and we want to find short, you take your leg. I'm finding short, so here's why. So how to find the answer? You take 12, you plug it in to the square root of 3 divided by 3. So when I simplify, 12 divided by 3 gives me 4 square root of 3. That's one of those special cases right here, when you're given your leg and you want to find short. Well, now that we have short, we want to find hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is just short times 2. Short is just hypotenuse times, your hypotenuse is just short times 2. So take your short, which is 4 square root of 3, and multiply it times 2. So that's how we got x. Okay? Alright, we have 45, 45, 90. In this case, we have your hypotenuse, which is 6. But there's no square root of 2. So you have to use your special case, which is right here. You're given your hypotenuse and you want to find your leg. So you have to plug it into this. You're given your hypotenuse and you want to find your leg. So 6 square root of 2 divided by 2 gives you 3 square root of 2. Those two, we got the bad cases out of the way at the very beginning. Those are your 2 cases that take the most work. Okay, number 10. Number 10 is not bad. It's 30, 60, 90, and you're given your hypotenuse. When you're given your hypotenuse, I would find your short. You find your short by dividing your hypotenuse by 2. And then to find your leg, you just multiply your short by the square root of 3. Okay, number 11 is best case scenario. You're given your short and you want to find everything else. So find your leg, 8 square root of 3. Find your hypotenuse, short times 2, 16. Alright, 12 and 13. I'm actually going to get a new one so I can do it with you. They're a little bit in depth. 12 and 13 are a little in depth. Alright, so we have 12 and 13. Okay, it's 30, 60, 90s. So I'd work it one piece at a time. Well, first of all, I know this is 30 and this is 90. So I'm going to ignore this right here. If that's 90 and that's 30, then this has to be 60. Well, that's your hypotenuse. So in order to find your short, we would divide this by 2. So, your short is found by dividing your hypotenuse by 2. So your short would just be the square root of 3. And your leg would be the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Your leg would be the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, which is the square root of 9, which is equal to 3. So x is equal to 3. Okay, so now we've got that triangle figured out. Let's look at this one. So all we know is that 60 is a square, so your leg, we know that leg is equal to the square root of 3, and we want to find short. Well, this is your bad case, right? You have your leg and you want to find short. So you have to plug it into your case, your scenario. So you have to plug it in here. You have to go the square root of 3 divided by 3. Well, the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, which is 3. And 3 divided by 3 is, so y is equal to 1. When you get your test tomorrow, the very, very first thing I would do, I would write all of this on the top of your paper. I would write all of this on the top of your paper. I would memorize it. I'd write this. I'd write that. I'd write this. I'd write that. Yes. Yes.
If I'm y,
Mm-hmm.
the leg is 30, could you just automatically know that y is 1?
You could. You could. Okay, 13. 13. Let's find x first. Let's find x first. Well, it has to be 45, 45, 90. And here's why. If that's 90, and that's 90, that's 90, and that's 90, and this is a straight line, and again, that's 90, then this and this have to be the same, which means this is 45 and that's 45. So if your hypotenuse is 5 squared root of 2, then x is going to be 5. Okay? And if this is 5 squared root of 2, then this side is 5 squared root of 2. So to find your hypotenuse, you would do 5 squared root of 2 times what? Just the square root of 2. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is square root of 4, which is 2. So 5 times 2 is, so y is equal to 10, x is equal to 5. Square root, did y'all follow me on that one? Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 5 times 2 is 10. Yes? Are you on the back or the front? Why? You said cosine? We're not using cosine on this on 13. We aren't using cosine on these at all. These are just special right triangles. Cosine and sine and tangent don't come until the back. You're using special right triangles on these. Yes. I mean, it might have worked. Did you get the same thing I did? Here, come get my answers and check.
I don't know. I think I just...
Okay, let's go to the back though. Here. Let me get your picture, your phone picture. Let's go to the back and let's talk about trig. Okay, in numbers 14 through 17, you're just setting them up. So I wanted to see, well, the cosine of j is 16 divided by 20. Guys, I'm not going to count you wrong if you don't simplify it. I'm not going to count you wrong if you don't show me this, because when you plug it in your calculator, it's not going to count you wrong if you don't simplify it. So I'm not going to be that picky. Okay? It does say write it as a decimal, and I didn't tell you where to round it to because none of them needed to be rounded. Notice, I did not plug it in to cosine. I just did 12 divided by 20 to get 0.6. Okay, so all I did was cosine of j. Well, here, cosine is adjacent divided by hypotenuse. Sine of L. Sine is opposite divided by hypotenuse. Okay? Yes? Okay, opposite, which let's talk about sine of L. Opposite is always straight across.
Like
Opposite of the angle you're talking about. Hypotenuse is always across from the 90-degree angle, and adjacent is the one that's left. Okay? All right, now 18, 19, 20. That's when you actually plug the whole thing in your calculator. So what is sine of 44? Plug that in your calculator. Sine of 44 is, and round it to the 10,000th, which is 4 decimal places. So you are actually plugging that in to your calculator. Okay, now let's go and let's practice setting up these trig equations. Okay, in 21, 22, 23, and 24. So remember, I always circle the angle measure I'm using or finding. So for 21, we're using 63. So, Natalia, if this helps you, I always write OH because 12 was opposite of 63 and the hypotenuse is across from a 90-degree angle. So what saying should we write at the top of our paper? SOHCAHTOA. So which trig function do I have to use? Sine. So you'd set it up as sine of 63 equals 12 divided by x. When x is down low, you just switch them. Right?
How do you know you're using sine?
Because SOHCAHTOA.
63 to x. You switch 63 to x.
You switch the whole thing. Sine 63 and x.
Oh, okay.
You switch the whole thing. You're solving for x. I know to use sine because of the saying SOHCAHTOA. Since I have O and H, that tells me to use sine. If I had A and H, I would have to use cosine. Okay, so when x is down low and you're solving for x, switch the whole thing. Sine and 63 are stuck together like glue. Never ever break them. If you break them, what do we have to use? What do we have to use if we break the sine and the angle measure? It's called inverse. Okay, so when you switch those, now it's 12 divided by sine of 63, and you get 13.5. 12 divided by sine 63. Okay, here's an inverse one on 22. So I circled x because that's what I'm finding. Remember, we never use our 90 degree. We either use the 60, like something like 63, or what we're finding, x. So 19 was my opposite, and 22 was the adjacent. So I have O and A, which means I have to use tangent, because TOA. So tangent of x equals 19 divided by 22. Well, now I'm solving for x. So I need to get x by itself, which means we have to take the inverse. So when you break tangent and x, you take the inverse. That's when you have to press the funny buttons in your calculator. So you press second, tangent, and it should look like tangent to the -1. That's tangent inverse. And then you press 19 divided by 22, which would be 40.8. So that angle measure is 40.8. Okay, I'm going to put the next two answers up here. I want y'all to try them, and then look up here to see if you if you got your answer correctly. Alright, on number 25, this is how I set up the problem. Guide wires 80 feet long. 2A, I think that was supposed to say 2A. Guide wires 80 feet long support 2A 65 foot tall telephone pole. So obviously the telephone pole is straight up and down, is 65. And the support, the 80 foot long support, I don't know, I guess it doesn't say. I just assumed that the support was going to the hypotenuse. Yeah, because it's holding it. That's how you would anchor something down. So this is the one you are finding. X is what you're finding. So I used opposite and hypotenuse, which is sine. So you had to use the inverse of 65 divided by 80, and I got 54.3 degrees. Okay, and there's one more topic on this test. Remember, if it's acute, right, or obtuse. Remember, there's one step that you have to take first. You have to remember if they actually make a triangle. So, is 10 plus 15 greater than 20? Yes, then you can keep going. If those two are less than 400, or if 400 is greater than 325, if a squared plus b squared is less than c squared, then it's obtuse. I always think if c squared is greater, it's obtuse. If a squared plus b squared is greater, then it's acute. And if they're equal, then it's right.